touch each other, please. They go right down deep, and they have collided. So both the BWT cars collide.
Inside squabble between the two Williams. Looking for that Rosberg tap the back of Webber. That is absolutely the last thing any Formula One team wants to see.
That's a Lacey and Heidfeld. I don't know what's happened, but it's a big 4-hour cross, as if he hadn't got enough pressure on him.
Oh, we've lost a wheel. It's a racing engineering car that's ripped his left wheel off. Furious at his teammate. That will be a very fun team briefing.
Hello everyone and welcome to the GP Rejects podcast Teammate Collision. I'm Lennart and with me today is, as usual, Jeremy. How are you?
Hello there. I'm doing pretty good. This is our first podcast of the year. Last one we did was our end of season sourness podcast back in Abu Dhabi, so it's been a solid 3 weeks since the previous season ended, and so we're back.
Indeed, and we're looking forward to the exciting 20 race season ahead. So, yeah, well, it's going to be a fun season preview.
Is that 20 races ahead or 20 races to go?
Indeed, we're going to have races Sunday. We're going to have races Tuesday. We're going to have races Thursday. So 3 races a week for 10 months. So awesome. But yeah, joking aside, we're going to look at the first 3 races of the season, see how all the teams fared, and going to find out who is hot, who is not, and what we expect for the rest of the season from each team. And then we're going to discuss on how we felt about the races as a whole, and then we're going to look into other news around F1.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to letting off some early season steam. There's a lot to talk about this year. 2021 was absolutely crazy, but it was really exhausting. I mean, I'm not joking when I said earlier on that it's been like 3 weeks since the season ended. We've jumped right back into something completely different. We got Ferraris doing really well. We got Red Bulls doing really well when they finish, and Mercedes not necessarily championship material. I say that famous last words, but yeah, it's been an interesting beginning to the season, so it'll be good to get a lot of early season stuff off of our chests and see where things are going.
Agreed, and we got a special guest for tonight, or maybe not a guest, someone who sent us in something. Namely, the wise sage Confucius has given us his Chinese wisdom on what the 10 teams should look forward to this season and how they should approach the rest of the year. So I say we open things first with the leaders in the championship, because after all, we're GP Rejects and we want you to keep listening, so we will keep the bottom teams near the middle of the podcast.
Buried somewhere in the mix.
And so we're basically starting with Ferrari. And what can you say about Ferrari this year?
What can I say about Ferrari? It's incredible that I've been on the hype train now for 3 races and I haven't been let down. Usually the hype train lasts about a week or 2. We've seen in the past that, especially in Vettel's day, they would usually start very strong. And I mean, this is why I have to be cautious. Ferrari are famous for their poor development over the course of a season, especially when they were competing with Red Bull and more recently Mercedes. So, but yeah, what can you say? They're basically faultless. The only fault you can tell from Ferrari probably has been Carlos Sainz's embarrassing exit from Australia, but Charles Leclerc has been on fire. He's been brilliant. I mean, I've always considered him top level driver, and now that he's got the equipment to basically go for a championship, he's going for it. I'm not downrating Sainz. I think Sainz has done a very good job. I'd like to see him challenge. But right now, it's all Leclerc's championship, basically, at this point. Getting way ahead of myself, but at this point, I can see Leclerc hoovering up many, many, many wins over the next few races.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I can only agree on Leclerc's hot start. He's been very good. So he has got the potential to take this all the way. He enjoys a massive lead as it is. He's standing at, right now, 34 points, exactly. He's 2 wins ahead. So, yeah, he's got in a very good position off the start. Of course, a lot of races to go and a lot of chances for mistakes. That's going to be one thing Ferrari will have to watch out, that they keep the positive momentum for the entire season, because while Red Bull have struggled out of the gate in terms of reliability, they will fix that and they will bounce back. So that is one thing Ferrari cannot afford to get cocky right now.
It's interesting because we're almost criticizing them even though they haven't done anything wrong. Like, Ferrari have been almost faultless this whole season, and that's very unlike Ferrari. We've seen time and time again them mess up with strategy, or in 2020's case, just leave Vettel to make his own strategy. And nowadays, they seem to be fast and competent, which is, I mean, if we want to get into this, like, think about 2 years ago, what we were talking about when Carlos Sainz moved to Ferrari from McLaren, and any pundit worth their salt said that he was an idiot for doing this. Like, McLaren were on the up and up. They're a strong team, and Ferrari were nowhere. Ferrari finished 6th, and they were lucky to finish 6th if AlphaTauri hadn't overtaken them with a few good results. And now look at Ferrari. They're at the top of the tree. They're strong. They're basically faultless. I'll keep using that word because it's true. So yeah. I can certainly eat my words from 2 years ago. I would never have expected this level of performance and them to have taken such a strong advantage from these new rules. So, I mean, good on them. Can't fault them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looked really bad that we thought Binotto's regime would be a failure from the word go, but in the end he was, as the famous saying goes, a few light years ahead, and he was thinking about the long-term picture. And right now Ferrari structures are definitely improved. Their operational procedures must obviously be better, otherwise they wouldn't have these results. And I mean, as you said, Sainz was considered at best a horizontal move, but right now he has a championship car. Whether he can use it to mount a championship challenge himself will remain to be seen, but he has the potential. I mean, before qualifying 3 went off the rails for him, I think if I remember correctly, he was on way to out-qualifying Leclerc in Australia. So, I mean, the potential is obviously there, and like, I wouldn't even say we're criticizing them, but we're being cautious because, again, we had seen this before, not just in the Vettel era, but before that. Like, think about the early stages of other seasons, like 2013. I think 2013, exactly. That's where they started quite well and then basically completely fell off the earth. So I would say we're not being critical, we're just being cautious. But again, the potential is there. If someone from the future came and said Ferrari are going to sweep both championships with ease, it would not be too surprising, I would.
Yeah, let's keep cautious for now. I agree. I think Sainz, what he needs is consistency, and so far he's been fine. Like, he's finished a place behind Leclerc both races, other than Australia, which he just apparently lost the plot. And he had an R-Factor-esque crash where he was on the grass for 5 seconds before he went out. But yeah, like, I think if he's consistent enough that he can stay behind Leclerc every race, all he needs to do is take up a win when Leclerc goes off, because Leclerc will make a mistake. He's not going to survive every race in first. So I'm not writing Sainz out of the championship because we still have another 37 races to go. But right now it's definitely Leclerc's advantage.
All right, before we get to the next one, we obviously need to listen to Clone Fuzio's advice. And Clone Fuzio says, to win titles, avoid the terror of the unforced driver era.
It's very wise.
Wise words for Ferrari indeed. And again, we got 9 more teams with that wisdom coming up. And next is actually the reigning Constructors champions, namely Mercedes.
Mercedes, what can you say about them? I would not have expected them after Bahrain to be second here. They did very well in Bahrain to take advantage of the bad reliability for Red Bull. And I think that was going to be a kind of a high point for the early part of the season. Sometimes it happens. I think of McLaren in 2009. They had a really bad package, but in the hands of Hamilton, they managed to take advantage of a crazy new system and took a 4th place before it got disqualified. But I think Mercedes and Bahrain felt like that. It felt like, okay, they've not got a great package, but they took advantage of it and got a really good result. And this won't be the norm, but it seems like it is. It seems like they're comfortably third best behind McLaren and behind Red Bull and Ferrari. So again, it's cautious. They must be one of the more unexpected results to be doing so well in the standings as they are, because their car is not as good as the Red Bulls or the Ferraris. It finishes races, and that's what Mercedes has always had. They've always had really good reliability. So I think that they could genuinely steal second in the championship here from Red Bull if they keep up that amazing reliability, because they have two very competent drivers. Hamilton he dropped the ball in Saudi Arabia, but he's not getting any younger. He's not going to have. He has more mistakes these last 2 or 3 years than he used to, but he's still going to be there every weekend, pushing. And if Red Bull can't do it, then Mercedes could take second this year. But that's, once again, we have 37 races to go. So
yeah, I mean, I fully agree, and in fact, I would say the driver pairing has a lot to do with their early successes. I mean, we obviously expected them to be right at the front because, Toto Wolff said in preseason testing that the car wasn't looking that great, but he said that literally every year since 2014. So anyone who still believed him on that, let's just say they have a very positive view of humanity.
yeah, and it sells papers and it gets clicks, Glenn. It's
obviously it's all business. Anyway, that's one thing I cannot possibly afford, as you said, outside of the rather unfortunate Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for Hamilton, though it should be noted that he got a bit of a bad hand with the safety car, so he probably could have finished higher. It's not like that, but it's not like he was in a position where he should have finished fourth or anywhere near the podium or anything like that. It's just, again, let's just say he didn't turn a bad situation to gold, and quite frankly, even criticizing him for that feels like tyranny of huge expectations. So,
are we so used to the luck of the gods going in Hamilton's way that we're genuinely shocked if a red flag doesn't get called when he goes down to 10th?
Yeah, I mean, even at the Australian Grand Prix, the reason he finished behind Russell is because Russell got really lucky with that safety car.
Yeah, he pitted right when the safety car came out. So.
I think it was at Vettel's retirement, but I'm not actually sure.
It was, I think it was Vettel's crash. Yeah.
Yeah, so luck hasn't been quite on Lewis' side this year, and I'm gonna be selfish and knock on wood as far as that staying that way, because it makes life more interesting in the sport. But generally speaking, I think the rest of the season will mostly depend on whether Mercedes can get the development race going, can catch up. I mean,
I definitely believe they can.
Yeah,
if they're doing
obviously
this well after 3 rounds, they are going to be fighting for second at the very least.
Yeah, agreed. In the end, and they have lots of competent personnel. You don't win a million Constructors' Championship without that. So even if they got the new routes wrong and or were hampered by the new budget cap, by people going somewhere else, I don't exactly know what caused it. And again, don't believe what they're saying. But in the end, I think they're going to be right up there. I think in the ideal case, I cannot yet say that they might mount a serious championship challenge, but I would be more surprised if they don't have a car that can genuinely win races near the end of the year, and would be less surprised if they have one. So it's all a matter of development.
I don't think it's a hot take to say that both Russell and Hamilton will win at least one race each this year. They will probably win 2 or 3 each. That's my hot take by the end of the year.
Well, it's not the hottest take, as you yourself said, because I am very much inclined to agree with you, especially but we're going to get into that a bit later. We also haven't had the really high aero circuits yet, like Monaco and Hungary, and we don't even know how the Mercedes will actually look there, because according to some, and the results back that up, the Mercedes is also not quite the most powerful engine anymore. circuit.
Especially
so.
on the straight line. We saw that at Bahrain. I think it was the bottom 6, I think, runners were all Mercedes engines. And when they came to the speed traps, they were all at the bottom.
Exactly, so I would not be surprised if, especially, again, Hungary, Monaco, the likes, Singapore, if those tracks turn out to be much more in Mercedes' favor. But time will tell.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think Mercedes are one to watch. I think they'll easily finish second this year if Red Bull don't get their arses into gear with regards to reliability. But I guess that's our next discussion.
Indeed. And before we go to Red Bull, we mustn't forget Fuzio's wisdom, which says, if you have two drivers clever, development must never say never.
What? Yes. Listeners at home can't hear it, but I'm nodding my head sagely.
All right, on to Red Bull. Or as it is now known, Red Bull Racing, Red Bull Powertrains.
Oh yeah, the totally not Hondas. But, yeah. Poor Max Verstappen. I shouldn't say that. He just won the World Championship. I'm a bit more of a Verstappen guy than I am a Hamilton guy. I'm not a huge fan of either. I mean, I would be super happy if Leclerc wins this year, but I do have a lot of sympathy for Verstappen because he's had 2 retirements in 3 races, which have not been his fault. If you consider that he could have finished second in both races, he would be right behind Leclerc right now in the championship, and Red Bull themselves, which is I guess who we're talking about overall, would be easily second in the championship. So big shame for Verstappen's reliability. I mean, Perez had the same in Bahrain. He did very well in Saudi Arabia. He's had a strong start to the year.
Yeah.
Perez seems to have periods where he'll have like 3 or 4 races in a row and he'll always be like in the top 4. And then he'll have 3 or 4 races where he's just totally out of it and he has just an absolute dire patch. So he started off the season strong. It'll be interesting to see if this is like an Eddie Irvine situation where he's just suddenly come into his own one year. Mm-hmm. If he has, I'll be happy. It's nice to see a second driver at Red Bull who can back up Verstappen consistently. I'm not saying that criticism of the previous Red Bull drivers because it is just a snake pit. But it's nice it would be nice to have like a positive environment at Red Bull if both drivers contributing and both drivers doing well. But judging by right now, they're going to be a distant third by the time the season's done. At least in the constructors. I reckon Verstappen could take it to second or third. But constructors, my prediction would be that they're going to be sitting in third at the end of the year and a distant third. Because they need to get their reliability sorted out. This is sad.
Agreed. I mean, in the end, pretty much all previews of the rest of the season for Red Bull are pretty much going to boil down to the question: are their engine injuries something permanent? Is this something they can fix or something they can fix? So, in the end, you can, up to a certain point, it even feels inane or pointless to even talk about the performance of the drivers, great as it was, because, again, in today's Formula One, you just can't afford to have a finishing rate of 50%. That's just not going to get it done.
Yeah, maybe
honestly,
30 years ago.
Yeah, but honestly not. So I say Formula One, I mean, there isn't any sport these days where you can afford to only finish 50% of the races. So in the end, the question that have to be asked is this an issue that can be fixed? Will the inevitable engine penalties, because those will be coming sooner rather than later, will those break their necks? I mean, in the end, just like Ferrari, again, if someone from the future said Red Bull wins the championship, Max goes back to back, it would not be too surprising. The team is good enough for that, and if they can manage the reliability woes, then all you need, even with Leclerc's advantage of over 2 wins, you pretty much just need to win 4 races in a row. Said like it was no thing, but yeah, generally I can't say he's out of it yet until we actually know whether the hand grenade is actually a hand grenade or just pretty much all the bad luck of the season crammed into these first 3 races. So yeah,
it's a big shame for Verstappen because
sure.
we're being robbed of a really good championship fight between him and Leclerc. And we've seen a couple of races from them, especially in Austria a few years ago, when back when Ferrari were competent in 2019. We've seen some good dicing between them, especially this year. I've really enjoyed the front running, especially in Bahrain, where Verstappen was behaving like an idiot. He was just going for every single lap for about 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was great fun to watch. I mean, like,
adorably stupid.
I'm not going to call it the smartest strategy of racing, but it was great fun. Like, I really enjoyed it. So, it's a shame that Verstappen is basically out the championship already, 3 races in. I can't imagine that this is going to change for Red Bull. I imagine he will get many wins, like 4 or 5 wins this season, but I don't think his reliability is going to get better. Red Bull just have such a poor reputation for reliability. Even in their championship winning days, if you remember 2010,
yes.
Vettel almost lost the championship via 4 or 5 various problems that took him out of race winning positions.
Yeah, so again, the comparison is interesting because a lot of them, again, happened early in the season. If you remember, he had the issue in Bahrain that dropped him out of a guaranteed win. He had the brake failure in Australia. So, in that way, it actually is very similar to the current season, but of course, again, we will have to see how things turn out. Of course, one thing that helped Vettel back then in the Red Bull days was the fact that there wasn't just Ferrari, there was Ferrari and McLaren. And so pretty much cynically, as funny as it sounds, Red Bull in a way need Mercedes to be talked about, the potential race winning team that can muck around with Ferrari when their car fails, when the Red Bull fails, when the drivers aren't there. So pretty much right now for Max to get back into it, it would really help if the race win question became a question between 3 teams and not just 2.
Yeah, perhaps. That's probably the only chance I can think of for him coming back. Or Sergio Perez, 2022 Formula 1 World Champion.
Impossible is
Just
nothing.
like Mark Webber won the championship in 2000. Oh, never mind. But there's at least the hope that Perez could do well this year.
Amazing.
I was 14, Lennart. You have to forgive me for being a Mark Webber fanboy that year.
It's all good. It's all good.
All right, who's 4th in our Constructors' Championship? Pardon me, Lennart, we haven't done our Clone Fuccius quote.
Indeed. So this one is actually quite fortune cookie. To enter the title chase, you must finish every race.
I'm loving the rhyme. Actually, it's nice. It's nice flowing wisdom.
I had a lot of practice writing poems for my ex-girlfriend, so.
It's nice to know you've been spending your time wisely. Okay, so tell me about McLaren, Lennart.
Yeah, basically McLaren is... I have no idea why they are 4th. Again, that's why you listen to the GB Rejects podcast, because of such expert analysis. No, but seriously.
On earth for McLaren 4th, honestly.
It makes
after
no sense.
Bahrain, especially.
Yeah, pretty much. They were nowhere in one race. They had Lando Norris basically sneak into a good result in Saudi Arabia, and then suddenly in Australia, bam, right up front there. And that was as the quicker version of Melbourne, which, as we've discussed earlier with Mercedes, should not have been that much in their favor given the potential issues of the Mercedes engine. So it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, I mean, it beats me. McLaren have just it was embarrassing. I was so sad for Lando Norris. I mean, you said specifically last year that Lando Norris is arguably the best driver in the world, and to see him lounge around fighting for P nowhere in a death battle in Bahrain was quite grim. It was him, Ricciardo fighting against Latifi and Hulkenberg. I remember it, and I was sitting in the pub with one of our community members on the forum, and I was just saying, like, I'm not sure I can stomach watching this every week. I'm not sure if I can stomach the only time that I see Lando Norris is when he's trying to overtake, Nico Hulkenberg, who's only there because Vettel got COVID. And it's like, oh my god. Yeah, but somehow McLaren are 4th. It is the unexplainable fact that somehow McLaren returned And we just have to accept that apparently they seem to have solved their issues very quickly. Who knows? 50 question marks after McLaren. Because
Exactly.
Norris clearly has the upper hand. He's clearly just dominating at that team. Then Ricciardo is not doing terribly, but it's the same relationship between the two drivers as it was last year.
Precisely.
But just 50 question marks as to where they're going to go. Yeah, I got nothing more than that.
Neither do I, honestly. We will have to. This is literally the only case where it would be absolutely insane to make any prediction, because so far logic hasn't applied to them, so why should it start now?
Is this the year Lando Norris wins a race?
Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, if we can randomly be good at Australia, despite the car apparently not being good, then why not be good at Swans? As if, I don't know, give him Italy again. Worked last year, so why not?
I had the most terrifying thought that same day in the pub when I was watching Lando Norris fight for P17. I was thinking, what if Sochi last year was his one with the racing gods? What if that was his one chance to win a race?
Oh.
What if McLaren never get better?
The pain.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness that's passing. It seems like McLaren have already got themselves back at least semi-decent. So,
yeah. Klonfutius is not quite as optimistic, so Klonfutius says P4 is just a number and a letter. The car must become much better.
He's not wrong. Those are facts that I can't disagree with. Can't argue with that.
Agreed. Then on to P5, and we are to the pink-blue menace, Alpine. Alpine. I pronounce it correctly? Who cares?
One of those teams which just seems to be there or thereabouts most of the time. I mean, them and Alfa Romeo and Haas have sort of blended into sort of the midfield pack these days. McLaren are perhaps there as well. It's hard to gauge where they are, but every season there's always a development of a pack, and Alpine are definitely in that murky midfield where they're almost always fighting for 7th or 8th. But it depends on the track and it depends on their drivers. I mean, Ocon is pretty good. I wouldn't call him excellent, but he's pretty good. Alonso hasn't had a great start to the season, but considering his pace in Australia, he's definitely still got it. I don't think there's any calls for him to retire old man the way we had for Kimi Räikkönen, God rest his soul, or Michael Schumacher in his final year. So
yeah,
I think the team pairing are pretty good. They're a solid team pairing. I don't think they need to change anything. They just need to collect the points and get the car better. But I mean, they're the same place they were last year. They don't seem to have improved or got worse. They don't seem to have got any more or less interesting than they were last year. They're there.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty much a damn good description of it. They are there. Despite their big talk, I mean, we all remember the insufferable L-Plan nonsense we've been subjected to for at least half a year now. And in a way, I am, as petty as it is, I'm kind of glad they are still in that midfield pack, because Jesus Christ, those references, those jokes, those memes, they were insufferable.
Do you want to explain it for the audience who might not know what you're talking about? What is L-Plan?
Yeah, basically around, I don't even know when it exactly started, but near the end of last season, Fernando Alonso basically just talked about his future with Alpine, that he has, that he sees big things in the team's future, and the marketing team from Alpine basically jumped on that and turned it into L-Plan, because nothing says good marketing like random Spanish. For a French manufacturer, mind you. So yeah, anyway, and then that, as everything the Renault, Lotus, Enstone marketing team does, got done to death, and obviously Formula One fans, because they like their running gags, like everyone does, I guess, jumped onto that, and yeah, since it's been L-Plan this, L-Plan that, L-Plan those. Jesus.
No, I think you did a good job. Yeah, I appreciate the emotion you put into your love of Formula One, your love of Fernando Alonso. So, I mean, any last words about the incredibly interesting team of Alpine?
Yes, as Claude says, to truly make Alonso king, spend less on Twitter marketing.
Very good. That's easily the best one you've done so far. That one definitely sounds like Clump Pushes. I can believe that is real.
Yes, and from Chinese wisdom we go to Italian engineering, the minor Italian engineering in form of Alfa Romeo Racing.
Oof, that's an interesting one. Alfa Romeo had a wonderful start to the year. It was so nice to see Bottas out-qualify Russell and sit right next to Hamilton on the grid. He hasn't had perfect luck in the races, and Guan Yu Zhou has been there or thereabouts. He hasn't been dreadful. He's been dependable, if not entirely quick. When it comes to Alfa Romeo, this has really shown the team for what it is this year. I mentioned this in my race report for Bahrain, but I'll say it again. You have a situation whereby a team which has had a very bad 2021 is coming into the new year with a much faster package, at least one driver who's very quick, and they hold themselves back due to their own incompetencies and their own amateur mistakes. Yes. When a team is at the back and they're making pit lane errors, or they're having problems with getting silly penalties here and there for not following rules, or just miscommunication issues, technical and logistical issues, it's okay to have them, but not when you're now fighting for points and every point counts.
Exactly.
And that is what put Alfa Romeo possibly on our Rejects of the Year podium last year, and it's still biting them now. We've still seen issues with the Alfa Romeo grid. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Saudi Arabia whereby Guan Yu Zhou had to do the double penalty.
Yeah, that was in Saudi Arabia, which, I mean, though in the interest of fairness, I actually do not even remotely agree with that penalty, but I'm not arguing your general point, mind you, so I'm not going to get into that much. So, but yeah, this shouldn't happen.
They've got Bottas, who seems, since he got fired from Mercedes, to actually be enjoying his life, which is nice. He's doing quite well. He's quite fast. He enjoys the team, clearly. Guan Yu Zhou is slow but dependable, but he's new. He's the only rookie on the grid. He doesn't have very much expectations, so give it till halfway through the year before we decide that he is another throwaway rookie like we did last year. But yeah, I think they'll do pretty well. I reckon they'll be 7th or 8th in the standings. I think they're going to throw away lots of good results. I think they'll get good results, but I think
they could get more.
Yeah, I think they could do much better than they have done. I don't think it's going to be a Williams 2012 situation whereby the car and the drivers there's I don't think there's anywhere near that kind of gap between the potential and the performance.
Exactly.
But I think it's more of a technical side of things. I think we're going to see more like someone like...
The one I was thinking of was, I'm not sure, I think it was 2017, that year where Haas had that very great race in Australia and then basically both cars dropped out because they couldn't attach the wheels properly. That was the kind of
my goodness.
thing I was thinking of with as far as actual potential and operational results go, but...
Yeah, I mean, Haas in the last few years have been the perfect example of throwing away good results and not having the most motivated driver lineup. So I think Alfa Romeo are doing quite well because Bottas is motivated. He at least seems to be enjoying himself, and I'm sure he really enjoyed battling Mercedes like on merit. And he must have delighted in the irony of racing against Russell when Russell himself had been in the Williams the previous year, complaining about why Bottas was doing so poorly, fighting him down in 10th. So there's a delicious irony to Russell himself now finding himself in Bottas' shoes, and vice versa.
So, as far as I'm concerned, I would say I agree with the notion of there being room for operational improvement, and I also agree with the idea of a generally okay lineup. I mean, as you said, Bottas is enjoying life again, and he's more on a level that I would say actually meets his abilities. Like, not in the sense that he had absolutely no business being at a top team, but in the end, at a top team, he pretty much always just was going to be a number 2 driver. That wouldn't have changed whether his teammates were no matter which teammate he had that was at World Championship level, be it Hamilton, be it Vettel, be it Leclerc, be it Verstappen, in the end, at a top team, he is just a number 2 driver. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but you get the point. And
yeah, it's about motivation. I think he's happy if he's the number 1 driver. Anyone is happy if they're the number 1 driver in the team. And at Alfa Romeo, he's got a ton of years. He's got like 3 years on his contract. He's at a pretty decent team. I mean, they haven't turned up with the worst car on the grid.
Exactly,
so,
and
he's in his 30s these days. So like, he's not, again, like many of these drivers who have been around for 10 years or so now, he's not getting any younger. So he's probably content to drive around the midfield and take some good results.
Especially since, if I recall correctly, he said that the longer contract offered by Alfa Romeo was pretty much the thing that made him go there in the first place. So he must be, well, I won't say in heaven, but pretty damn close to it. And
yeah,
Joe...
He's probably got everything he wants.
Yeah, and Joe is, well, he hasn't taken the league by storm, but if I compare him to last year's batch of rookies, he has already shown more in 3 races than those 3 did the entire last season, honestly.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, Tsunoda had a pretty good debut in Bahrain. He did fall apart a few races in, but he was pretty impressive when he started. I won't go as far as agreeing with you yet, but we'll see. Maybe he'll embarrass himself.
We'll see. But certainly better than both Haas rookies. I don't want to even hear that if anyone disagrees. I don't want to hear that.
I think I'm on your side with that.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, again, he's not going to be the driver of legend. He's probably going to be out of the sport. Give it 5 years, 10 if the money lasts. But he's okay, and again, okay is a pretty good level even compared to established drivers. Like if we compare the current lineup to last year's lineup, I'm taking either one of them over either one of Giovinazzi and Raikkonen. So yeah, they're in a good position.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean it's also difficult because in the old days you could have so many rookie drivers. In my current profile, which I won't mention yet because it's not published, but I'm looking at this driver and reading reports from the time, they're always comparing him to other drivers around the time who were rookies, and it's like it must be very tough on rookies these days, especially when you have someone like Latifi who's only going in on his own, and same with Zhou. And last year was an exception because we had 3, but still, when you have so few rookies and so few drivers, like there's a lot more public pressure and public notice of the rookies.
Agreed.
And people like to hyperbolize. It's the same with movies. Like nothing can, a movie doesn't just have to be bad. It has to be the worst movie ever.
Trademark.
And a new driver can't be okay. He has to be the best rookie there ever has been since Sebastian Vettel, or the worst rookie since, I guess we'll say, since Nikita Mazepin these days. We can start saying that, but he's fine. I have nothing to say about Guan Yu Zhou, which is interesting, but there's room for Charles Pics as much as there is for Sebastian Vettel's.
All right, then we'll just give it up to our Chinese sage, who so aptly says, "This organization can step on the gas. They're good with Zhou and Bottas."
Very nice. These rhymes are getting more creative the more you do. I feel like you did them in this order, actually.
I kind of did, actually. Anyway, on to the next, many would say positive surprise, and we're talking about Haas Formula One here. Haas.
It's nice to see that their work actually paid off. I think it would have been absolutely miserable if they had, because they sacrificed 2021, and it would have been absolutely miserable if they'd gone into this season and been just as bad as last year. So really good that they're doing well. It's really good that they've got Magnussen back, because just like Bottas, Magnussen is actually motivated. He's clearly very talented. I've been a Magnussen fan ever since he started. I think it was criminal that he was sitting in a Haas for 4 years.
Agreed.
Or not sitting on the grid at all. So I'm happy that at the very least he's back in a Haas. So Haas have been so close to disaster twice now, because they really ran the risk of coming into 2022 with a bad car. That would have probably just sealed the team's fate. And then, at the last moment with this tragic situation going on in Ukraine. Obviously, the Uralkali sponsorship and Mazepin were out within days, and what it's meant is that Haas's main sponsors are also out, and at this such a critical time when they really need to get the points in, it's kind of been a blessing in disguise. I'm not the budgeter for Haas, so I'm sure if the budgeter and chief accountant of Haas is listening, they can email us here at Grand Prix Rejects and disagree with me, but it may just be a blessing in disguise.
Please do. We are always glad for insider knowledge.
yeah, you can catch me on LinkedIn. It may be a blessing in disguise, because even if they'd had a really good car, if they'd had Mazepin and Schumacher, I mean, how many points does Schumacher have this season? He has absolutely 0 points, and from what we understand from last year, Mazepin was not quicker than Schumacher. So can you imagine, with the pace that they have, that Haas could have left 3 races now with 0 points? So thank goodness for Kevin Magnussen, because if he comes out of this season with like 80 points, just imagine the prize money that is for Haas, which they haven't got any in years. I mean, pre-2021, they were getting 4 or 5 points a season. So if they can leave this season, they've already got 12. So if they leave this season with, say, 60, 80, maybe even 100 points, what a good news story that would be.
I fully agree with that. In the end, we are looking at a point where we could say whatever they lost with Mazepin sponsorship has been made up by Magnussen's potential, assuming it's going to go fulfilled, but I'm going to go into that later. Well, as you said, Schumacher is basically as successful as the average German Eurovision entry. So, yeah, Mazepin wouldn't have been better. So, Magnussen is the points gainer, the pretty much faster driver. There's only one question with Haas, and it's the same question that has plagued them ever since they entered the sport in 2016. Will this last? The thing with Haas is, as ugly as it is, and it is really ugly, I'm going to explain why in a second, they have never been more competitive or equally competitive than they were at the end of the season as they were at the beginning of the season. And that is bad, because that is pretty much unprecedented, especially for such a long time. Like, we're talking, look at the worst teams in recent Formula One history. Let's take the 2010 teams. Every single one of them was at the end of the year, at the end of the season, closer to the top than they were at the beginning of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Every single one, even the waste of money that was Lotus, Caterham, whatever you want to call them, even they were pretty much always closer to the top than they were at the beginning of the year, even if they started much further behind than Haas did. Whereas Haas have pretty much either stagnated, but mostly they have dropped off. And that is a constant. And that is why I am very, very, very cautious about their improvement right now, because we've seen this movie a million times.
Yeah, they're like the midfield Ferrari. It's like you have a hype train because you really want to see them do well, because I have nothing against anyone who works at Haas. I'm sure they're all lovely people, and they have peaks and they have valleys, and that's really in the reject spirit. Like, you just never know if they're going to have a great weekend or a terrible weekend, or a great year or a terrible year. That's kind of the appeal of Haas. Like, that's kind of why we watch them and why we make so many jokes about them. So,
Agreed.
I would love to see Haas do well this year, but all your sensible predictions are all correct. Like, it's they almost always fall off the pace, and by the end of the year, everyone just wants to go home. But let's just enjoy the honeymoon while it lasts.
Agreed. I mean, especially since I do expect this to last for a couple of weeks. I think Australia was pretty much an outlier where they were not quite there, struggled to make it out of Q1. In fact, Kevin Magnussen didn't even make it out of Q1, but I genuinely think that's an outlier. And they're going to be right back in the thick of it in Imola. So, again, as you said, let's enjoy the fun while it lasts. And again, the positive vibes are there, so fortunes can change. Or, as the wise Confucius puts it, to keep up the pleasant groove within the season, you must improve.
That flowed better, I think, than many of the previous ones. I think It wasn't quite as experimental or interesting, but it flowed well.
Yeah, and that leaves us with only 3 teams left, and the first one is AlphaTauri. And yeah, what do you guys say about AlphaTauri, Jeremy?
I don't have a huge amount to say about AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly is a very quick driver. I would say he's still leading the team. I don't think the relationship, much like at McLaren, I think it's a sort of a carry-on from last year. Tsunoda had some dreadful luck in Saudi Arabia. I think it almost came across like the team were just boycotting by proxy, or that the car just did not agree with the regime and didn't want to drive. So I'm sure he was not too sad about that, if I'm being honest. But a couple of reliability issues in the first few races, but I mean, Gasly had the same issue as well as the Red Bulls did, from what I know. I think it may have been a slightly different issue, but again, reliability issues, same as the sister team. I don't have much else to say really about AlphaTauri. I expect them to be 7th or 8th, as they always are, fighting decently for points, probably dominated by Gasly. But let's see how Tsunoda does. I guess Tsunoda is probably the most interesting thing. We know Gasly's good. We know he will get a really decent number of points and probably fight for top 10 in the championship. But let's see how Tsunoda does, because we have battered him so much, me and you, that it would be nice to see him improve this year and prove us wrong. But we wait to be proved wrong.
Yeah, he had the unrejectification to close out last season, so perhaps he got a bit of momentum to take into that. But as you said, AlphaTauri are the 7th team, the 8th team, the 9th team if things don't go their way, but hey. And the thing is, honestly, maybe that is my fault for having more expectations, or for, heaven forbid, it's my fault for listening to PR crap, but I genuinely think that AlphaTauri, perhaps themselves even believed it, that they would take this next step, not in the sense that they become contenders, but in the sense that they step out of Red Bull's shadow, that they become their own entity, which, if I recall correctly, was the entire idea behind the AlphaTauri rebrand, that they aren't just Toro Rosso, that they aren't just the B team, and right now they've pretty much just fallen back right into the B team mold. They have the same problems as the mother teams. They pretty much right now again exist only to showcase the Red Bull drivers for the mother team. So again, it could just be my fault for having too high expectations, for believing what they sold, whether they believed in themselves or not. But I am a bit disappointed in the sense, again, just in the sense that they wanted more, but they evidently can't or won't.
Yeah, I mean, if I may use your own line from earlier against you, I feel like we've seen this movie before. I feel like every time AlphaTauri turns around and promises that it's going to be a game changer, it never happens. They are going to continue being in the exact same place as they always were. I mean, the only time it ever changed was 2008, and that was because the Ferrari engine was just so much quicker than I think it was the Renault that in 2008, and the Ferrari engine was it was amazing. I mean, all credit to Vettel where credit is due, but like that Toro Rosso was a much quicker car than the Red Bull was.
Yeah, better engine, better, honestly, even better drivers. So better engine, better drivers, better everything. Short of, because if I recall correctly, the thing with Nui is that I don't think he ever really gelled with the late 2000s regulations before the 2009 changes came in. Like, none of the Red Bulls were particularly anything to write home about.
No, they grabbed the occasional podium, but that was more due to craziness in the race than
exactly more survival.
I mean, when David Coulthard gets a podium, you know it's been a crazy race. This is 2008. That wasn't down to Coulthard, you know. Like,
yeah, fully agreed.
Yeah, AlphaTauri and Toro Rosso, they exist to showcase Tsunoda. What they have is they have a breadstick. What the hell am I talking about? They have a yardstick between Pierre.
So
that's staying in.
Yeah, and let's not act like we wouldn't buy AlphaTauri breadsticks.
Oh, that's staying in. God. AlphaTauri have a yardstick with Pierre Gasly top line driver, very fast. If Tsunoda can be at least on his pace, we know that Tsunoda's the real deal.
Agreed.
So Tsunoda, I predict, will get better enough that he will be average and dependable, but I don't think he'll set the world on fire, and he will be promptly fired for not being Max Verstappen quality driver.
Yeah, that's probably the thing. Especially since Red Bull have currently are again in the situation where they don't know where to go with all their young drivers. They got, I think Edgar wasn't that great in Formula 3, but they got Lawson. They got, I always pronounce his name wrong. Vips. Yes,
Vips, I think.
the one from Estonia.
Yes.
That's not racist at all. Yeah, but
Yuri Vips.
thank you. Yeah, but so again, Tsunoda is on borrowed time. He could perhaps save himself. It all depends on what Red Bull want to do with Paris, because I still think guys like Marco will be politicking against him, not because they actually don't like Paris or because they don't want him in that seat, but simply because, hey, if we can just hire the number 2 driver, then why are you even here, Helmut? And
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, how that is kind of Helmut Marko's job, and he sure hasn't really provided world-beating talent for a few years. So
yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what they do. I mean, there's no rumors. Like, usually this stuff gets started off by petty rumors about, Tsunoda's on the way out kind of thing, and we haven't heard any of that. So it's been relatively quiet in the Red Bull camp. So I guess they're just waiting until 2023.
or perhaps they have changed their ways. They are now patient. Hallelujah. Oh my god, I don't even believe what I'm saying. But
I think your hope might be a little bit misplaced, but we'll see.
don't worry, I don't actually have any on that front. But yeah.
That's the spirit. What does Cologne Fuchsius has to say about AlphaTauri? Unless you have any final words.
No, that was actually it. So we might as well give it to the wise man who says, please choose your position. Do you have any goals or ambition? Convenient that his opinion on AlphaTauri matches mine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny that, yeah. Okay, who is ninth? There's only 2 teams left?
Indeed, we have only 2 teams left, and we're going to start with Williams.
Oh, Williams. Yeah, I was thinking, I know who's last, but I couldn't even think of who the 10th team was.
I mean,
Poor
that
Williams.
kind of speaks volumes.
It wouldn't be the first time I've forgotten a team. When I first met one of my good friends in this community in person, we had a long chat for many hours at the pub. This is back in 2018, and we were chatting about each team individually, a bit like the conversation we're having right now. And between us, we couldn't work out who the 10th team was. It took us about 20 minutes, and we suddenly went, "Oh, it's McLaren!" And the reaction that we both had that we forgot McLaren existed, that they were so bad that year. So, no insult intended to Williams, but I mean, they haven't improved a huge amount from last year. They're a little bit more competitive, but I think that's possibly more due to them taking advantage of the craziness of the beginning of the regulations. Albon has been very quick. I've been very impressed with Albon. I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought that he was going to be... Maybe he's just motivated. It perhaps is a honeymoon situation whereby he's pushing that Williams as much as it can go in the early seasons because he knows that he can get something out of it.
Yeah, and he's just happy to be back in Formula 1.
Yeah. I mean, judging by his performance, I'm happy to have him back in Formula 1. I'm very happy as how quickly he's going. So,
and it certainly beats recreating accidents in the simulator.
yeah. That I can't imagine that was a very fun or rewarding job. When Helmut Marko is your boss, and your job as the Red Bull test driver is to recreate getting hit by Hamilton in the simulator. Albon's been quick. Latifi has decided to absorb by osmosis the talents and performances of Nikita Mazepin. He's crashed in every weekend since Abu Dhabi, actually, since his fateful crash at the end of that race. He's crashed in one of the main, sessions in anger qualifying of the race.
Yeah.
Every race this year. So I think not even Mick Schumacher smashed up that many chassis in the first 3 races last year. So, I mean, it's quite admirable how much he's doing to get himself fired at the end of the year. I don't have a huge amount of sympathy for Latifi. He wasn't all that impressive in the junior formula, and with George Russell as his teammate, I think he kind of got secondary popularity from that. He wasn't ever a threat to Russell, and for that, people liked him more. So I think now that he's...
Except for that one fateful day in Hungary. Never forget.
Oh, my goodness. Tell me about that fateful day in Hungary, Leonard. What happened?
He took on the entire Formula One world by himself and stayed third for a very long time. I have no idea how many laps it were. And then...
You just make it up. 50 laps.
And then he finished ahead of that great, talented George Russell and once and for all established his place in reject lore.
7th place. What a race that was. And it was acquired on merit, unlike George Russell's filthy, cursed podium at the following race, which we don't even speak of.
Fake podiums.
The greatest crime of that, if it wasn't for the fact that they took away Nikita Mazepin's fastest lap, was the fact that it put George Russell ahead of Latifi in the championship.
So fake.
I have nothing to say about Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I could not say anything else myself outside of the fact that I absolutely loved Albon's strategy. Like, okay, straight up, I'm gonna do the entire race but 1 lap on a set of tires, and I'm going to get away with it. Beautiful. That's the kind of stuff I love. As you said, Latifi is not doing too well. Latifi might be out of the sport next year, depending on whether someone else can cover up the money or they can find some other source. And in the end, it wouldn't be too horrible. I mean, he's still the son of a rich man. He can simply go to the Netherlands and be a semi-national hero there for his stint in Abu Dhabi. And yes, before any Hamilton fans think I'm agreeing with them. No, obviously he did not do it intentionally. I need to say it? Screw it, might as well say it.
It's besides the point. He's still a national hero in the Netherlands.
Exactly. So, yeah, he can just enjoy his retirement in the Netherlands or just do GT like everyone else. And so, yeah, I mean, nothing else to say. Williams are second to last, most likely going to be last by the end of the year. So... yeah, a development year in every sense of the word.
Yeah. What does Claude Fuchs have to say about that?
If you want that forward dash, you must replace Latifi's cash.
Replace Latifi's cash? Replace it with what?
Well, I guess with someone else who has cash and more talent. Or a sponsor.
Wise words from Claude Fuchs there.
And... last but not actually last and least, Aston Martin.
My goodness, yeah. Okay, so Aston Martin are sitting last in the championship. At this point of recording, they're the only team in Formula One with no points right now. Even Williams, even Haas, even Alfa Romeo all have points. Even McLaren, after their dreadful start, all have points. Aston Martin don't. I think Australia was especially a dreadful race for them. They had problems with their car all throughout practice. Vettel did almost no running, so when it came to the race, he made 2 dreadful mistakes and then crashed out, causing the safety car. My goodness, Lance Stroll has not had his best season. He's another driver, peaks and valleys. Sometimes he'll have very strong weekends, and other times he'll just be embarrassing himself. And he's been doing a little bit more of the latter. Nico Hulkenberg seemed to be the strongest driver at the team, and
in 2022, that's not a good thing.
I can't imagine ever saying that with a genuine degree of sincerity. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but Hulkenberg came into the team with at least a little bit of motivation because he's out the sport. He is the super sub, apparently the standard super sub of our generation, and he did pretty well considering his practice level when Sebastian Vettel sadly got COVID. But I think most commentators were reflecting on the fact that maybe Vettel should just stay in Switzerland and spend some time with his kids and his pets rather than sit around in 19th place, because I think that's where he's going to be for most of the season.
Yeah,
that's a shame because he had a on and off 2021. I criticize him quite a lot, but he had some good races last year, and so I don't think anyone really wants to see him while away his final years fighting for P nowhere. But that's just the position he seems to be in for this year. So he's gonna buckle up and grit his teeth and deal with it.
I mean, there are a couple of things that are just noticeable. As you said, many were saying Vettel should just stay in Switzerland. There was this meme where you have the COVID test and someone is making an additional red line with a marker there, and they suggested he should do that. The thing with Aston Martin is, even before the season started, they said that they were planning a B chassis because whatever they had going wasn't working. Again, the B chassis is pretty much unusual, and it speaks volumes that there simply wasn't much to expect from Aston Martin in the early stages. I mean, Australia, I would be surprised if that isn't the worst weekend of the year. Like, they are going to be better simply by not messing up as much. And the thing is, in the end, the question is, A, how quick can that B chassis car him? And B, will Vettel's motivation still exist by that point? Because, as you said, he probably imagined more from 2022 than being a backmarker. Thanks to YouTube, the wonders of YouTube, you can listen to the team radio after his crash, and he sounds straight like he's back in 2020. Like, it was seriously depressing. He barely said anything after he crashed, just a mumble again, like, yeah. It just listens exactly like his worst races in 2020. And as last year has shown, it's not just him. Like, I will be the first to say this Vettel is old. This Vettel isn't quite what he used to be. But the reality is last year he shows that he can still occasionally do great things. And again, that is the question. Will all that motivation from last year be out the window by the time the B chassis is ready? Because if it is, then I don't see his career lasting beyond this season. If it wouldn't probably mean forfeiting a lot of money, I would even imagine him not even finishing the season. But again, he would probably give up way too much money for that, so he won't. But
I don't. Vettel hasn't ever come across as the kind of person who would just ditch his team.
Exactly, that's another reason. But
I mean,
it's just
someone has to be the slowest. Aston Martin this year seemed to be right at the back, and someone has to be the slowest. And I mean, I don't sympathise with Vettel any more than I do with the other driver who has to sit at that, because I mean, Vettel has had his share of championship-winning machinery, so I can hardly sympathise with him too much. But if this is the way it is, then he has to do one of two things: either he has to just quit now, or he has to grit his teeth and bear it and carry on. But I mean,
simple.
It depends what the plan is for Aston Martin. It depends what his manager is telling him. It depends what their actual goal and strategy are. If they're going to turn around and say, "Oh, by Baku we're going to have a brand new car and it's going to be twice as quick," then he'll probably check out until then.
Agreed.
But if it's like, "Oh, we're not going to have a fast car until like Spa," then I can't imagine that Aston Martin are going to be picking up too many points if that's the case.
Yeah.
Especially not from Stroll, considering how he's began the year. So.
I mean, what else can you say?
Put Nico Hulkenberg in that car. Never thought I'd be saying that.
Neither did I, but honestly, it can't be that much of a choice.
I mean, like, say what you want about the absolute dullness of putting Nico Hulkenberg in your car, but at least he's motivated.
Yeah, agreed.
At least he gets in and out the car with a smile on his face.
Exactly, and there's this, that reminds me of that classic thing in GPM2 where when you play as a backmarker and you have the motivation value down, and you can basically cheat the system a bit by switching in the reserve driver, because then they automatically get a motivation boost and perform better. And so it's pretty much like that. So, yeah, perhaps that wouldn't be the worst choice. Like, you take over for Stroll one week, and you take over for Vettel, and then we continue that until the B chassis comes.
It's okay, Vettel. You only have to do every other weekend now. You don't have to pretend to have COVID just so you can boycott the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure most of the drivers were probably jealous that they weren't able to get out of there earlier on. But that's, I mean, we haven't even talked about Saudi Arabia. Should we even talk about Saudi Arabia?
It would be an explosive topic.
Should we launch into that discussion?
Yeah, let's just close out with the last words of Cologne Fuzios.
Let's do this.
Your drivers are not full of mold, so make your B chassis bold.
Yeah, that's basically what we've spoken about. So yeah, no, all agreed. I guess we can end on a few mini topics. We can talk about Saudi Arabia. I'd be interested in knowing what your reject of the first 3 races is.
Well,
like, what would you say has been the most disappointing thing overall?
Well, I'm going to answer that with a split answer, as lazy as that is, because in the end, there's an on-track reject of the first 3 races, and there's an off-track one. And we did it last year where we had those as one, and generally that's how it should be, but for the first 3 races I'm going to indulge it a bit. And the on-track reject of the first 3 races is obviously Aston Martin. Like, even during testing they did look bad. Like, they were okay. As I said, they were already thinking about B chassis. They had the slowest long runs, but nobody expected them to be completely backmarkers. Like, everyone was thinking, okay, yeah, they're going to be 7th, 8th in the standings, basically where they were last year, but a bit worse, and not outright, straight up back to the grid. And the off-track reject of the first 3 races is Liberty Media. It's simple as. I'm not going to single out the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, even though that was the worst of it, but it's just the general gist of it. Like, they're talking about replacing Spa, they're adding Las Vegas, they're adding Qatar. They actively politicized to keep the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix going. Is that even a word I just used? Anyway, and even the PR gimme, the Russian Grand Prix, I can guarantee you, if the Swift ban didn't result in the situation that Liberty Media simply can't get their money from Russia, even if they wanted to, the Russian Grand Prix would still be on. I guarantee you that.
It's a horrible thing to say, but I don't disagree. I think perhaps they would have bowed to public pressure eventually, but it says a lot about the moral scruples of the people who run Formula One right now, especially because, I mean, I also don't have any sympathy for any of those organizers. What happened at Saudi Arabia, whereby effectively the government, for those who somehow missed that, those shenanigans, the Saudi Arabian government effectively threatened to cancel exit visas for the personnel and the drivers and the teams if they didn't go ahead with the race, despite a missile strike hitting an oil refinery, which is only a few miles away from the track. You could even see it on the television on the free practice screens. And I don't have any sympathy for the race organizers because they decided to get themselves into bed with dictators and people who have no care for their personal safety or health. And this is what happens. You get a big pile of money, but you also get all the baggage which comes with it. And I wish them all the best with their big pile of money, but I can't imagine the drivers will be going back next year. I can't imagine the personnel will be going back next year. I think people are talking about drivers making a stand in future, speaking out publicly, which hasn't really happened since it's happened. There hasn't really been a public outcry from the drivers. I'm interested in why that might be. But I think it's not necessarily the drivers who will make the difference. I think it's the ordinary men and women in the garage. Because those people are also there, risking their lives for a bunch of rich guys to drive around in cars. And I can't imagine if I had family who were in the paddock in Saudi Arabia ever encouraging them to go back.
Neither could I. Honestly, the thing is, most drivers, I think, don't speak out simply because they don't have the luxury to. I think Hamilton said a bit. Vettel very recently, I think just yesterday, gave an interview with German media where... No, I think it was today. But he just gave an interview with German media where he basically said, as if he had anything to say, the money made from going to Saudi Arabia would be going to Ukrainian war victims, to children organizations in that area, and just generally for charity causes. So, again, and Vettel has the luxury, he can say whatever he wants. Like, he could pretty much dance on Liberty's table and they would applaud him as he does. And so, yeah, I think, but most drivers simply don't have that luxury. Like, Max could do it, Leclerc could do it, but if, say, Alexander Albon talked a big game about F1 being wrong, then I think behind the scenes, his seat would be not quite as safe as it should be. To pick a random example.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of thing I imagined from certain people who are involved in Formula One. Like Ross Brawn, to me, has always come across as someone who is at least of good character. I don't know anything about Domenicali or anything, but I mean, it's quite clear that they showed that they have no moral scruples, and I mean, I have no sympathy for them, and if anything that happens to them, I mean, after Spa last year, I said that it was like Pandora's box, and you disagreed with me, but it does feel like Baku and Spa last year, early to mid-season last year, it feels like F1 is a whole new sport. It feels like the last year has just been a total trip down the rabbit hole.
Agreed.
And we're still going, and it's, I mean, we're not going to anywhere like Saudi Arabia anytime soon until next year's race, but you just wonder when the next crazy thing is going to happen, and what the FIA and Liberty Media are going to do to just bankrupt any remaining conscience they might have.
I think the best quote-unquote bet on that would either be a return of the Russian Grand Prix if the war ends anytime soon, or the Qatar Grand Prix could again do what the World Cup did and simply, well, have a very unfortunate cost on a humane level. But yeah, as you said, and I'm right now fully inclined to agree with you, we're basically just seeing whatever nonsense they come up with next. And yeah, though as much, well, no, let me rephrase that. Basically the thing is, I don't really want to brag about it, but back when Ecclestone, when it became clear that Ecclestone and CVC were out, or on their way out, everyone was like, oh yeah, new leadership is gonna change the game forever. And I, with my charming cynicism, sat in the back and said, yeah, no. I mean, don't get me wrong, Liberty Media has improved on a lot of things, admittedly some of which were obvious, like, yes, obviously you make a better YouTube account because, duh, but the reality is in many ways they have improved both the coverage of the sport as a whole. But the reality is they would be just as much about money, if not more so, because they have to finance the cost of the purchase. They have to pretty much keep the stockholders invested, especially now that they're moving sport to pay TV in so many countries. They need to keep the cash flow going to justify the lower audience because of that pay TV move. So in the end, again, this is nothing I actually want to brag about, but the fact of the matter is a lot of it was obvious, and especially without wanting to stereotype American entertainment companies, they do operate under very predictable schematics, and yeah, a lot of it was, admittedly with the power of hindsight, clear as day, but yeah, we are down a not very pretty path, and let's just hope. at least some of the core of the sport will be fine despite it all. I mean, we'll keep watching. Let's not fool ourselves.
Yeah. Nope, I have nothing more to add to that. Rather than ending on a depressing note, let's try and end it on something positive.
Well, we could talk about the new Vegas Grand Prix. Because, believe it or not, I'm not excited about the concept of the Vegas Grand Prix. That's just another money grab with an undue focus on the United States. Like, no offense, the Formula One market in the United States is growing, yes, but it's not 3 races growing, and the current situation of the world doesn't justify 3 United States races when a lot of other rich countries can barely get one together. But the layout is actually not that bad. I think it's very similar to the now I gotta make sure I have the right Canadian city, the Toronto layout in IndyCar. And so the race itself could be fun, but of course, yeah, it's just a question of whether we can get excited about Las Vegas, whether they want to push it at the new Monaco, because that's a race that has been under fire a bit as well.
Yeah, it's to me, it's more interesting conceptually, as you say, with regards to its relationship with Monaco. Monaco is going to be interesting because they themselves are Monaco is always, quote unquote, the jewel in the crown, and I'm not sure Liberty Media are actually invested in it.
Yeah.
If you're considering where Liberty are throwing their money, I don't think it's unreasonable to predict that Monaco isn't necessarily on their list for the future. And maybe it will stay as a legacy race, but what you're inferring is that Vegas will be the new Monaco.
That is at least the idea that they're having. The thing is, when we are talking about replacing Monaco, it's the situation where I think Formula One is kind of overplaying its hand. Like, obviously it's going to survive without Monaco. Like, nobody's going to stop watching, oh, they've removed Monaco and I'm out. Or at the very least it's going to be in the percentile, pro-mile faction of fans, so nobody's going to notice it. But I think Monaco still stands on top of most other F1 races because it's the Monaco Grand Prix, the dash through the harbor, the old school glory, the lost glory of old motorsport, as it were. And so I think Monaco could pretty much then, if Formula One gets uppity, say, okay, fine, if you don't want us, then we will find something else. I mean, if we are talking about a positive note, then I can certainly say that the Monaco E-Prix is going to be a very exciting event, and it was one last year. So,
yeah, I mean, who knows who's going to win? I mean, who knows if they don't run out of battery before the end, or if they don't all get disqualified.
Admittedly, that is a problem with the series, but
it makes it exciting, though. It makes a dull, otherwise dull Monaco Grand Prix a real event.
So the thing is,
I agree.
The Formula E Monaco Grand Prix last year, they did the full Formula One layout with a slight adjustment, which actually makes it a better circuit than the Formula One layout. I actually like that the chicane after the tunnel that Formula E used more than the Formula One version. But the thing is, that race was arguably not just more entertaining than pretty much all but one of the last 10 Monaco Grand Prix, but more entertaining than the super majority of Formula One street races, period, over the last couple of years. So, again, for Monaco can simply say, okay, then the E-Prix is now the big main event, and I think people are still going to love it. If it becomes the official Monaco Grand Prix, not just the E-Prix, but the Grand Prix, and obviously Formula E would be all over that. So I think the future of Monaco is very exciting because, again, one way or another, Formula One could live without it, Monaco could live without Formula One. Both are aware of these facts, so yeah, if we're going to have to live with the business-oriented mindset of Liberty Media, then I guess we can find some fun in looking at the negotiations from an outside perspective.
has it come to this, where we're now hopeful for when in F1 inevitably overreaches itself and collapses under the weight of its own ambition, that Formula E picks up the pieces of all the hopes. But yeah,
that's a very cheerful ending now, have we? But yeah, do you have anything genuinely hopeful to say?
I am looking forward to seeing Ferrari actually be competent. Famous last words, but it is really nice to see Ferrari do well and regularly. So if Charles Leclerc is world champion in 2022, I will be a very happy man. But speak to me again after Monaco, and let's see what's going on.
We are then now. Okay. But I do agree there's a lot of excitement within the sport itself once we leave the business with the head checker and basically just look at the development race. There are going to be a lot of factors, as you said, Ferrari, Red Bull, whether they get their reliability problems sorted out, Mercedes, whether they can get back to the top, what McLaren is up to. Will Haas keep it up? What is the ominous B chassis of Aston Martin able to do? So, yeah, once you ignore the ugly side of it all, there's still a lot to like about the 2022 season so far.
I think that's a good place to end it.
Agreed.
Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me on here, Lennart. Thank you very much for listening as you are at home on our new YouTube channel, which I'm sure is where you're listening to us. Like, comment, subscribe. Please comment. Let us know what you think of our opinions and if you have any disagreements. We're getting this new YouTube channel off the ground and we're really excited about it. Go onto our website, join our community. We're on Discord. We have a forum whereby we vote for rejects of the race every weekend, and we have a predicament predictions competition, which is run by yours truly as well. A lot going on, and it's going to be an interesting season. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening, and see you on the next time around. Thank you very much for inviting me, Lennart, onto this. And any final words?
It's been a pleasure, and I obviously want to thank everyone for listening as well. The links Jeremy mentioned are in the description, and always remember, where teammates are close, teammates collide.